So, I'll get straight into it. So, just a quick agenda. So, I'll give you a run through of what I think the user experience is. Working in a bank digital team. And sort of show you, how we see as banking UX and how we actually place it into action within the bank. I will go through some of the challenges that we sort of see, sort of trying to fuse user experience into the bank. A lot of those we're quite familiar with. So it's trying to get solutions and alternatives to sort of try and, turn some of those things around. And the main thing is, I'll go through a case study. So, going forward at this point in time, our digital team is, heavily increased in size. So we're sort of, being one of the traditional banks, a lot of effort's gone into our branch and ATM network. So the obvious trends that our transactions have been declining in our branch space, and the focus from senior management has now been pushed into the digital space. So that's been great for us. Our team's expanded in size. So and we've been given some, some fairly aggressive targets to sort of really transition a digital team, which is really all about just pumping out projects and initiatives within online banking and our website. But now really starting to fuse into more of a sales marketing focus, which is actually quite new for us. So we're actually sort of doing a lot of work at the moment to try and really get origination across all of our websites, and then port them into internet banking as well. So I'll sort of run you through, the thinking of how we're sort of trying to transition our team from purely, the product project-centric kind of approach into how we actually focus and put UX into the front of the mix. Alright, so starting off, what is a user experience? So traditionally in the banking space, we will get our targets given down to us from senior management, so you must deliver X sales by Y. So we all get into a room, we huddle around going, alright, how are we going to do this? So we'll basically just think up into a project, and most of us will look something like that. So from there, we would write our 400-page business requirements doc, so we get into a room of IT, we flesh it out, go agile, and do all the estimations. We normally meet up with a bunch of these guys, and we go back and forth to get our projects going, and then at the end, hopefully we won't actually end up with something like this. So that's always been a fairly traditional model, and in Suncorp, user experience is very much in its early days. So we've always had a great relationship with sort of IT, but the design and the UX side has always been something that's always been put last in the mix. And you can always see in your project plans, there's never actually been a slider or a KRA for how you actually define the user experience of it. It's either you deliver the project or you haven't. So one thing we really want to do is, how do we actually turn that around? So at this point in time, we've got about 9 or 10 initiatives on the run in our online team at the moment. So in terms of educating, our department in the bank in general of how we go about that. So we got into a room and said, is there any way we can actually show off the fact that we're building these 9 or 10 projects? Yes, that will help us increase sales, they'll increase our usability, but how do we sort of show that one big picture? So this is basically what we come up with, which much like Randers, we actually focus on what's the journey of a customer. So we have all these projects, but at the end of the day, how do we actually show the customer hitting each of these projects and each of these touch points? So this is how we saw UX in action. So we started off with Sandra. So what we did was we did work and we actually developed personas. And at this point in time, we wanted to hit more the early 20s segment, as that's one of the segments we're targeting this year from a product and channel point of view. So we started off with Sandra. So she's starting university and she needs some accounts for her wages to go into. She also needs a savings account. At the end of the year, she's going off to Bali with her girlfriends. In terms of how she does her banking, mainly uses her mobile phone because it's easier because she's on the bus when she gets to uni and gets to work, etc. But she does have a tablet at home, so usually when she's at home watching the Kardashians, she crack open the iPad and then watch play with online banking basically during the ad breaks. And with her iPad, it's usually her main source of news and Facebook and Twitter, etc. So what Sandra did was, she was looking around for a bank account, so she was on Yahoo 7, so she quite often visits that site to get her music news, so she's obviously quite into music. Notices some digital advertising on the side there, so one of our promos for one of our everyday banking accounts, so she notices that. She did have friends who were with Suncorp as well. One of her friends who's gone to Bali was with Suncorp. So she did ask her a couple of days ago at the cafe and said, I don't mind Suncorp, they seem to go alright, they do everything I need. So between the peer review and looking at the ad, she clicked on it and went from there. Sitting on her couch at night time, so she went to our website, she had a look around, in terms of the content. So she did find the website easy to use. The thing she liked was it sort of used basic language, so it wasn't this huge tables of links, and because it wasn't sort of just a PDF thrown onto a website. So she found it fairly easy to read, and she found it quite fresh as well in terms of look and feel. So after visiting the website, she did have an inquiry about the account. She wasn't quite sure if she was, being a full-time student, if she was entitled to not have to pay a monthly fee. So there was a simple inquiry form on the website, so she punched in an email. So on our side, that email just gets poured directly into the bank's CRM tool. So that way, one of our consultants can easily jump in and respond to the query and give her the answer back with a turnaround time of around 1 or 2 hours. So Sandra got the answer she wanted, and she was happy with that. So from there she goes, all right, I'm quite happy to move to the bank, so I'll go and apply online. So in the end she decided to use her tablet to apply online. So I guess going from the bank-centric point of view, we really wanted to reiterate the fact that we are really putting a lot of work into responsive design. So as you saw before, we're building a brand new website for suncorpbank.com, which is launching in a few months. On the side, we're pretty much rebuilding the front ends for all our origination platforms. The main emphasis at the moment is actually the user interface. So we're pretty much putting responsive design at the forefront of all our channels. So in terms of the 101, responsive design, depending on what device we're using, it actually renders the content completely for the device, utilising media queries, etc. So as you can see on the far right, that's your typical desktop, laptop experience. Going into the middle, you're moving more into tablet, so we start removing the auxiliary content, we start beefing up the fields, it's more touch friendly. Moving into really more the iPad mini or the in the middle, the cover that part. So again, the buttons are easier, we remove less text that really isn't relevant, but it's just handy, nice to know if you're in a desktop environment. As we know, people using a laptop or a desktop, they're more in a research zone. If they're on an iPad, they're basically in couch potato mode. And if they're in a mobile on the far left, they don't want to get in, they want to get out. Really just punch on the very basics of details. Try and do a lot of, I guess, auto-population or use drop-downs. Don't make them have to enter free text because there's a high error rate. So a lot of work on the back side is actually going to rebuilding our front end to actually improve conversion and actually making sure that no matter where customers hit us from, a mobile, a tablet, a phablet, a Vidlet, a desktop, etc., we can actually render that presentation for them and get the account open. So she went through, so yeah, she said, yep, use it on my iPad, it seemed pretty easy to fill out, I like the big buttons, etc. So next part was, so yesterday we did see a few examples of electronic verification. That is also one area we're looking at, especially I guess with our Gen Y customers. By nature, they don't want to go to a branch, they have no need to go to a branch. So there's not much point them opening up an account online, only to be told, can you please go to a branch or a post office to show us a piece of paper and your passport. So we really want to do some work on the electronic verification side. So again, we have a project running there. So quite simply, plug in your details, we go off, check the relevant databases, and then bing, there's your account number there, which is great for Sandra. So she doesn't need to touch a branch, her account's good to go. She can give it to her employer to pay wages in. So from there, so Sandra did say that she mainly uses her mobile to do banking. So as soon as she's set up, she registers for the app, etc. And starts doing mobile banking that way. So the thing she liked is, yep, she can get straight into the app and use a PIN, doesn't have to use her ID and password anymore. She also liked the simple balance feature. So in terms of actually shaking the phone, she can see a balance of one of her accounts without having to log in. So they're things that she saw, and it actually just speeds up the day-to-day experience. So she's not forced to have to type in numbers that the bank has told her to enter in. She can use her PIN that she's decided to use. So a lot of work's going into that. I'll cover the mobile app later on. I guess from the bank point of view, really apart from all the UX, the main thing you have is simplification, so which is almost like a dirty word in banking, but at every point, in every project, in every process, how can we actually simplify it? And the fact that we don't have to design because that's always how it's been done, or that's just the banking way to do it. So obviously kudos to the guys at ANZ and CBA who have really revolutionised how banking apps are built. In terms of sort of using PINs and being able to actually show a balance without logging on. Now, if we try to do that first, our legal compliance team will probably just sweat. So saying, how dare you show a balance without authenticating? So we're sort of lucky that really with Suncorp Bank, we're fast followers, so we don't really have the manpower to be first to market. So we sort of, I guess, enjoy the fact that we can get some of the bigger guys to test the waters really from a compliance legal point of view. That way we can go, well, these guys have done it, so we should be able to do it as well. So yeah, that was Sandra using the app to do her banking. So the other thing she does is, she's got a trip to Bali at the end of the year, going away with her girlfriend, so she wanted to make sure that she could hit her target, so she needed about $2,500 for the holiday. So she went into the app, went into the goals section, and actually set up a goal for her holidays. So she typed in, yep, I need $2,500 for the holiday. I can roughly transfer about $100 a week out of my pay. Once you fills in all the details, it actually tells you either how long it's going to take you to reach your goal, or reversing it based on the amount, how much you need to put into your account. So she set up an automated transfer, so at least she knows between now and the end of the year, she can just keep putting that money away, and by December, she's got a $2,500 ready for Bali. So she quite enjoyed that because it just does everything for her. She doesn't have to worry about going in and doing budgets and having to use manual tools. And hopefully she gets a cocktail as well. So another area she wanted to do was, so her main friend is the one who's in charge of the accounting for the holiday, so she's the one who's running back and forth with the travel agent. So they did meet for coffee one day. This was the same girl that did recommend Suncorp Bank as well, so she said, alright, we do need to pay a deposit now as a flight centre, do you mind if you just give me the $500? Luckily her friend's got the app as well, so she simply looked up her friend in the app and just bumped the payment to her. So that was great for her because she didn't have her account number, but she obviously had a picture in there as well. So that was easy for Sandra, so again, she didn't have to learn extra numbers that the banks always force you to learn. So again, on the bank side, we're starting to play into sort of, I guess, mobile payments, which I'll cover a bit later. The main one we're sort of looking at is primarily bump payments, mainly the fact that it is real time, so I still have a bit of a pet peeve that we have all these very nice shiny front ends with the Kachings and Go Moneys. So in this instance, I want to pay my friend $500 for their holiday. Still the other person sort of sits around for that magical 24, 48 hours whilst the money slowly makes its way through the direct entry system. So explaining that to a 22-year-old customer why it takes 2 days for them to get from here to here becomes a challenge. So one thing we're focusing on, well, if we do efforts for mum, dad and a child all have accounts, mum can easily throw money into their kids' account via mum. If we have friends, so targeting our new youth account, we can actually encourage their friends to join their account and do some social marketing. That way, if you do owe your mate $50, they will actually get it in real time. They won't have to wait 2 days, which is a long time usually for a university student when it comes to money. So yeah, that's how she paid her friend, and the deposit for the holiday was all booked. So in terms of her other work, so she is renting as well, so her real estate agent got on the phone and said, I do need some bank statements just to prove your income coming in. So she jumped on the internet banking and downloaded her bank statements as well. That was great because she doesn't really trust the mailbox. She lives in a complex with 38 other units. Mail always gets lost. People steal mail. It never goes in the right box. It's always hard to get your statement. I'd rather just go online and get them. She also noticed on the side that she had an ad for personal loans as well. So that was one thing she was interested in. So going into internet banking and then playing with the calculators as well. So I know calculators was mentioned yesterday, same with Suncorp. Our calculators pages on our mobile site and our desktop site are by far the busiest of pages traffic-wise. Customers lap like calculators. So the great thing about internet banking is that we can actually pull in real interest rates, pull in their real accounts and their real balances, and give them a real contextual picture of their affordability if they wish to get a personal loan. We can still do bits of that on our website, but naturally we don't know who they are on the website. But there's a lot of power actually having that contextual position. So in terms of converting them and getting them to apply for a loan, they're in a much better position as well. So I guess that was really the journey we took. So I guess in terms of the other presentations we've already seen, it's a recurring theme of actually focusing on the journey and putting the customer first. And when we actually this is really just a lot of mock-ups. So some of the stuff's underway in terms of our IT development. Some of it's we're not ready yet, so it's still a mock-up concept only, but at the end of the day, we actually show this to our product teams and our marketing teams, and it just completely clicked of going, oh, okay, now I actually get how all these things work together. So, which really in terms of the last 36 hours here, it's not rocket science, but when you're sort of working for a larger institution, you've got your silos, there's big projects, lots of people running around, actually sort of putting the customer at the front and focusing on the journey, really open up their eyes in terms of how we approach it. So, we've got a lot of great learnings out of that, and this is certainly a process that we want to utilise as well. So the next major feat for us is our branch strategy. So like most banks, we're sort of seeing where our branch footprint works in the next 3 years. No secret that our branches will probably change in terms of what they offer, how they work, etc. So this journey will be important as well. So coming back to the omni-channel strategy, this is purely just the online component. So I did mention a little bit about our call centres using our CRM, but we haven't even taken into effect of a branch yet. So once Sandra's probably 5-6 years older, she's looking to buy her first home, where does the branch fit into this? So obviously the move point, applying for a home loan online, it's still a very scary concept for most banks, but in terms of the branch, end of the day, the branches are going to be an advisory element. So customers, I guess banking's not really high on the list, banking scares them, they don't get banking. In terms of a branch, we have highly skilled consultants there. They do get banking, they love it, that's what they do day in, day out. So having that network and that availability for them to either visit the branch physically or utilise video chat or chat amongst digital channels in terms of internet banking and our website, they can get access to that advisory service, so that helps them make the better decisions. Alright, so I guess, so summing that up, so what we sort of said was, well, in terms of how the bank really approaches developing our online channels now, this is really the way we want to go about it. So we wanted to define a user goal or need. So when we sort of said that first, that was quite scary as well, because usually you pretty much have a sales target. We want you to open up 4,000 accounts per month. You go figure out how to do it. I guess that's really got nothing to do with customers. I don't really care how many accounts we open per month, but we know, well, what's the user goal? Well, Sandra wants to be able to open up the account online. She doesn't want to have to go to a branch to do it. She wants to seamlessly open up an app, use that for day-to-day banking, and then potentially use desktop banking for the more sort of advanced features such as statements of viable real estate. So that was really the goal. So sort of trying to convert, okay, got Mr. Senior Manager, that's his goal. How does it actually convert into a user need or goal? So that really puts the focus on what we should achieve across each of our areas. So from there, this is more the traditional approach of defining a business objective. So we know across all our channels, we have to obviously open up accounts, we want to affect our conversion rates, etc. So that's when our traditional metrics really sort of come to the mix. And understanding what those metrics and KRAs actually feed back into the user goal. And importantly, like we said before, it's starting to focus on the journey. So it's very much easy, okay, here's a work request, go build a new product. So, well, how does the person open up the account? How do they service the account? What happens if something goes wrong with the account? They need to contact the call centre or the branch, or do we have to do something differently in the mobile channel compared to tablet, compared to internet banking? So a main part of us is getting, I guess, working with our colleagues now to, apart from just building a home loan or building a deposit account, that's actually the easy bit, it's just punching in a heap of criteria into our core banking system. The hard part's actually focusing on that journey and finding out, well, customers, they will log on to mobile 300 times a year. They may go to a branch 7 times a year. So in terms of each of those touch points, how does this new product actually work across all our channels? So really focusing on that journey and having that holistic map approach really breaks down the walls, and it's actually been working really well for us to collaborate with sort of our products and our marketing team. So in terms of that part, obviously that's when our colleagues come to the mix. So we work very closely to our product guys, and Suncorp Bank are quite lucky. So our main department, in terms of those, I guess, product channel marketing, like we've got about 50 odd in our department. We run a very lean and mean machine. We're all on one level. So we do see ourselves as having a lot of benefits. So when we actually do want to build a product or build an initiative, when we snap our fingers, our speed to market is actually really good. So we work very closely with our product teams and our marketing teams, and as well as our technology team. So I guess Suncorp's quite renowned for having a huge IT house. We do build a lot of our IT in-house. But I think, the journey and the challenge for us now is with the sheer pace of all the, I guess, the online channels, ensuring that our IT departments are aware of what's coming out with banking. So they're very good at maintaining and building sort of core banking systems and worrying about middleware. But I guess it's our responsibility to make sure they have the focus on, well, how does the new mobile channel interact? What does that mean for payments? What does the RBA want us to do? So a lot of insight, and our IT department obviously gives us a lot of insight as well in terms of what they're seeing. But a big part of us is actually showing them, well, this is what banks are doing here in New Zealand and overseas as well. So actually having a huge breadth of showing the insight to our IT department of what's happening around the world. And last but not least, well, assuming that all works perfectly, we actually do meet the user need. So, and I guess it trickles down again. So if we meet the user need, Sandra and all her friends will go and open up the account. We'll get our sales targets and we'll get great usability and we'll get feedback via online surveys and customer sat. So it's sort of an endless loop. So that's really sort of the, I guess, the path we're sort of looking to take now in the online channel. So I guess it's really more Captain Obvious now. So having the end-to-end user experience is quite crucial to us now. So and it's been fun for us. So I guess most of our online channels have come from all over the shop. So we've had channels that the bank owned. We used to have sort of group online teams, and IT teams. And like most institutions, if you look at their website, you look at their apply online for an account, you look at their internet banking platform, I can guarantee they all look completely differently. They're probably written in a completely different technology. So, and once again, that sort of means there's a lot of overhead. There's different skill sets in terms of developers. In terms of design, a lot of those technologies, mobile never existed when they were built, tablets never existed, so the main thing for us is really looking at, I guess, our technology stack and sort of seeing between website, applying online, using mobile channels. Where does the UX fit into it? So, and it's great to see sort of banks like Nubank who are lucky enough to have that new platform from scratch. And in terms of Suncorp Bank, yes, we are undergoing a core banking replacement project as well. We actually will be installing the same software that NAB will be installing, and Nubank do have in production. We're sort of seeing in our sort of 2 to 3 year plan what's our sort of medium term strategy and what is our goals and our needs sort of fit into the bigger picture. So once we know we have access to a great new flexible core banking system, what does that mean in terms of UX and customers hitting our new system? So I guess the challenges for us at the moment, so it's no secret that risk is always a challenge. So being a bank, we're all about risk. So I think there's actually more people in our risk team than our online team usually. So it's always fun actually getting these guys and going into their office and saying, we wouldn't mind actually building an app where you can show a balance without logging on. And it starts sweating, etc. So it's always quite fun, but naturally we are a bank, and like it was said yesterday, banks are the safe haven for people's money. So banks aren't safe, we're all pretty much buggered. So we're legally obligated to make sure that everything we build is safe for customers, because at the end of the day, they've put a lot of trust in us. And I'll talk about it a bit later. We did use some testing on our mobile app that's in development. Every time it came through with security, a lot of customers didn't actually like the PIN. They thought it was actually too easy to get into the app. So security is always front of mind with customers. You can make your apps and your websites as slick as you want, but in terms of security, that's always the forefront for customers. And then naturally as well, we always have these guys as well. So for anyone under 35, that's the Simpsons' only lawyer who tends to bumble around court and occasionally doesn't wear any pants. Luckily, the bank, our Suncorp legal team usually do reference. Again, our risk team and our legal teams, that's just the nature of working in banking. So a challenge for us is trying to get all this innovative technology. So look at payments. There's 20 different ways to execute payments at NSC. Sort of trying to wrap that up in a bow and tell our compliance team this is roughly how you do it. That's always an ongoing challenge for us. But again, with the insight, the education, the awareness, we're bringing those secondary stakeholders into the mix for the journey as well. Like I said before, so security is always a big one. So interesting in the user testing. So we really wanted to, I guess, put the PIN log on onto our app, and we will have the PIN log on onto our app. But in terms of the testing, so we just finished some user testing yesterday. So we did 12 sessions, and 7 out of the 12 people who tested our apps and tested some competitor apps weren't actually fans of the PIN log on. Mind you, we were testing people around the 35 to 45 brackets. We did want to test more the middle ground, almost mum and dad segment. We knew if we got a bunch of 20-year-olds in, they'd just slap it up. But yes, security was, I guess, is always a big concern for us. So we always have to make sure, I guess, we sort of have an approach to security and understand how our two-factor authentication works. And trying to meet the goals. Some customers don't really give two hoots. Who sees their balance? It's just a number, so they'll happily weigh their app and go, look at me, I've got $5 in my account. I don't care. Then you get customers who, they'll sit there on the bus and they'll racing hide under themselves to make sure no one sees their PIN, and you see the ones crowding around the ATM freaking out that someone might see their PIN. So one of the things I'll discuss is we actually looked at the behaviours, and we're sort of seeing the two extremes of, and security was the biggest one, where people just care factors, basically the negatives of security. People basically want an app to be arbitrated. So we had, in terms of designing an app, that makes a huge, I guess, a huge difference into where we should actually scope our app. And the other main challenges for us too, so like most companies, I guess, banks have been around for a while, and for most of us here, our online channels have been running 10, 15 years. We all have some form of internet banking platform, that's ours. So the fun part now is customers are used to the functionality, so they're used to logging on, I guess, to a desktop and balances, transfers, transaction history, etc. So the fun part is we've sort of set a precedent of what functionality is available, and most people get what you can sort of get up to in an internet banking platform. So naturally, once we put this contraption into the mix, we can go two ways. We can either go, right, how do we actually fit 45 functions in an internet banking platform into a phone that's got, on average, about 500 by 400 pixels, depending on what device. Or do we look at the stats and go, I guess, what are the top 5 features? Should we just focus on building a subset of features and releasing it into the app? We know some customers don't mind it, but a lot of customers, as soon as you release an app, the customer goes, well, where's the rest of it? You've got transfers, you've got balances, why is there no B payment yet? Because we know 9% of our customer base for Suncorp do not use desktop. Once they register, they never use it again, they purely use a mobile solution. So if we don't put BPay into a mobile banking app, well, they can't pay bills. So it's the big challenge for us is trying to understand, should we try and, I guess, utilise UX and utilise, I guess, design principles, throw the kitchen sink into our current app and make it usable? Should we use continuous design and sort of say, right, we're going to build everything eventually, but we're just going to do the shorter, sharper drops. So at least the customer gets something of an app, but they don't have to wait 12 months until we actually build the whole lot. So that's something that comes with us every day in our app project at the moment. So I'll run you through a case study, I guess, of our mobile banking app. So we started work roughly around September, October last year. So did all the work on sort of user needs, and we did our business requirements, etc., of where we wanted to take our app. Did a lot of work in terms of what's happening in Australia and what's happening overseas, and then we started to form our team. So in terms of our business objectives, the traditional banking way of what we want to achieve. So we want to build a native app, so we'll focus primarily on the iOS and Android platforms. Sorry, is anyone on Windows Mobile? The stats just don't cut it yet to build it. We did tell BT, our IT department, can you please build it in a way that we can release different platforms? So they ended up choosing the Mono framework, which is very simple to PhoneGap. So that way, in terms of how they build it, the business logic just sits in one bucket, and those guys can just build a user interface for iPhone, for Android, for Windows Mobile, for BlackBerry, God forbid. We can actually build our platforms at fairly decent speed, as opposed to having, I guess, basically old C developers here and Java developers here, and once you get going, you need about 40 developers. Back to the old days, we only needed 3 to build a website, so native apps are fairly resource intensive. That was right, we want to build an app, so that's nice, where do we go from there? So the main springboard for us at the moment is, we'll do our apps, so obviously they will look shiny, the user experience will be great, but at this point in time with what we know, we want to focus really on the payments side of things. So pretty much we know at this point, if we actually want to go down the payments path, we need to build pretty much native app functionality that actually does talk to the phone, software and hardware. Because at this point in time, we don't really believe that if we continue on with our current HTML5 web mobile banking, we can't actually deliver some of these great payments initiatives. So that's pretty much the driving force as we're doing work. So we are looking at the V.me digital wallet platform. We're looking at a payments platform that Visa are offering. I guess we've got bump payments as well. That's a fairly basic form of payments. But in terms of the greatest appeal of mobile payments and NFC, whilst there's a massive ecosystem and there's a million ways to deliver it, we want to make sure that we have the right engine and the right plumbing. So once the world and Australia have figured out how to deliver a consistent form of, NFC, we'll be able to deliver that as well. Another part for us, I guess, is the marketing side. So traditionally, and admittedly up until about 4 months ago, we never really did any marketing inside internet banking. It was purely seen as a transactional platform. So the main journey in the last sort of 4 to 6 months is sort of working with our product and marketing team to say, well, the customer logs on to internet banking. We know who they are, we know where they live, we know what products they have, what products they don't have, the balances of those accounts, what they've inquired about. So we know an awful lot about them, yet 90% of our marketing is just shot out to newspapers and TVs where we don't really know who they are. So we sort of said, and sort of being a bit cynical about it, well, we know so much about the customer now, wouldn't it make sense if you want to do targeted marketing, so instead of sending something out in the mail, which probably just gets thrown into the bin, or Sandra probably never sees it, should we actually start doing some behavioural and targeted marketing inside internet banking? So we just started kicking that off now. So we had some basic logic running through, so we can actually sniff out utilising Adobe Analytics and utilising some logic inside internet banking in our core system. We can do some rules-based marketing as well. In the mobile space, that's the next phase as well. So customers, their phones in their wallet, they're touching it every day. So that's probably the likely real estate where you actually want to cross-sell offers to them and potentially use location services and push lights. That said, we certainly don't want to spam the customers through. There will be a lot of trial and error. There's nothing worse now than visiting a website, getting a big fat interstitial ad in your face when you're trying to read the news. I got that this morning when I was on Brisbane Times. So you've got to be fairly smart about it and try and be subtle and make sure the offers are relevant, not just doing a big fat ad for home loans to a customer who has no intention of buying a home. Yeah, and again, so contactless payments, so we're doing a lot of work, I guess, on the acquiring side with our merchants. We want to make sure that on the issuer side, or the retail side of things, we're there as well. So what we did was, alright, so come November last year, so we started going into planning mode. So what we did was, alright, we're going to deliver 4 phases of the app over around a year. So our first phase is basically build like for like. So what we currently have now in mobile banking, which is pretty much your log on, your balances, transfer, history, BPay, build all that like for like and build it in native, and it's all very nice and pretty. Phase 2 is the product value add space. So that's where we start to look at more of the V.me and how we can sort of enrich the functionality in the payment space. Bucket 3 was going to be the marketing space, so we start moving into target marketing. And bucket 4, which you probably can't see that, that's pretty much the question mark of payments and stuff. And I think the card really actually says that because we're not quite sure what's happening in the payments and NFC space. But we deliberately put that at the end so we can figure out what's happening and then look at that later. So initially we started looking at sort of scoping and we started fleshing out requirements. So we realised, well, if we actually want to build an app that sort of differentiates from other apps and differentiate how Suncorp Bank's built technology before, how do we actually put user experience into it? So what we did was we made the decision to bring in a full-time user experience designer and a full-time user interface designer. Because at this point in time, we've pretty much only built websites. So we know going into native apps, it's a whole new ballgame. So once you put in your touchy-feelies and your gestures and the platforms building iOS and Android, the amount of depth it actually takes to build a great UX on a mobile app is huge. So we decided we'll bring some guys in to help us out. So what we did was, we started building out the story card. So again, this is pretty much as far as we normally get in traditional banking. We go into agile mode, we break everything down to cards, and the IT guys are coming to do estimates. And then we work through and find out how many points they can crank out per fortnight. So generally speaking, that's about as far as we get, and design's never really a consideration. So what we did then, so we actually went into a room for 2 weeks, and we actually had an ideation session. So that was actually facilitated by our UX designer. So on the left, that was the team that was involved. So from day one, I wanted to make sure that we did run a very lean team for the app. So I didn't want a traditional technology project where you'd have a meeting and have 65 people turn up, of which 8 could actually make a call or make a decision. So every person that was in that group, we had basically people from our online team, a deposits rep, a lending rep, a call center rep, a branch rep, I believe we had a security and a legal rep. So whenever we had a decision to make, that person was there to make it. If they couldn't make it then, they had 24 hours. That was it. And that's still in place today. So, because if we can't get those decisions made, our velocity falls over because IT guys are twiddling their thumbs because someone's not quite sure if our compliance part 216 works in our app. So that was our team structure. So we did some work in our business vision and scope, etc. So the great thing about that was we had the whole team in the room, so we wanted to make sure that everyone knew what we wanted to achieve, so apart from let's just build an app. So a lot of the app was really about culture, so we really were shifting technology, we're shifting mindset of how design works. So that was really great to get people who never really experienced that. So our reps from the call centre and our branch and our legal teams, they'd never been exposed to that before. So they really appreciated, I guess, the bigger picture and what the bank wanted to achieve and how the app would sort of fit into each of these touch points of CRM and branch, etc. One of the main things we did was, well, what's our elevator pitch? What are we doing here? Why do we want to build apps? So we basically huddled in a room and we did half an hour and lots of post-it notes. I've never seen so many post-it notes in all my life. These UX guys love post-it notes. What we did was, so we did our elevator pitch and naturally was there. So basically wanted to build an app. So the part that was there is basically challenges the way you bank. Now the U is actually us as Suncorp people, so we didn't want to challenge customers and annoy them if we reinvent the wheel. But the main thing was we really wanted to challenge the way we would approach a banking channel. So we didn't want just something that was legally approved and it was a product and off we go. So we decided, right, every process we take, so we built the log-on part of the app. Well, what's the current process? Does it make sense? Is it just because that's how it's been for the last 15 years? Because we want to make sure every part of the way, where it's logging on, is it how you show a transaction, that's how you pay a bill. We want to make sure we sort of take a look at the process. Don't worry about the technology. Does it actually make sense in this day and age, or is this something that's just been dusty and that's just how it was built in 1999 when we launched internet banking? So that was our elevator pitch, so that was good to get the team in order. So what we did next was we actually gave everyone a homework task. So go and find your favourite apps. They don't have to be banking apps. Tell us what you use day in, day out. So the guys came back into the room, so obviously up the top there, so we did reviews of the Kachings and the GoMoneys and the NABs, etc. We went outside Australia, so we started looking at Bank in New Zealand, Standard Chartered Bank, we had Frank, we had it's PNC Virtual Wallet, one of my favourites. So we want to make sure, in terms of banks, we try to really push the envelope and go outside the square, not just build a list of accounts, at least in terms of design and process. Who's actually doing a good job? We also went outside of banking, so who's doing a great job of self-service? And admittedly, at the moment, it's probably the insurers and the telcos. So Telstra, as per yesterday, have done a lot of work to introduce mobile self-service. Our insurers are doing great guns. So in terms of logging on to my insurance with Bupa, I can go on there and see my claims and then see what I'm entitled to, etc. So in terms of desktop and mobile experiences, lucky for them, they don't have to worry too much about the heavy security side. So it's good to see the guys that have a bit more sort of leeway on the security side, so we can sort of see what they offer. So did a lot of work to sort of see, what's happening in the competitive space. And the important thing was, we told guys, we just don't want to build another banking app by bankers for bankers. We really want to see who's doing a great job outside of banking. So I think Telstra, insurance, even a couple of retailers, which is fun to watch, because retail online has been a pretty dirty phrase in Australia for the last 5 years. So the pressure of those guys to start delivering e-commerce websites and delivering apps to serve those customers, it's been great to actually watch and bring those insights into a very traditional channel that is online banking. So from there, so our next task was, alright, so we know roughly what we want to build in each of those drops. So we said, alright, we're going to design the balances page. So that's every person had that kit. So our facilitator said, okay, we want you to sketch out what you think the balances page will look like. Given that you know everything about apps, banking apps, insurance apps, Telstra apps, what would you want that first page the customer to see once they log on? Assuming we still log on. So we had all our pages there, and off we went. So our team basically started sketching. Some of us were great drawers, some of us, like myself, couldn't draw to save myself. But that wasn't the point. We're not artists, but we basically started sketching out of what we thought we'd like. So, and that was great because people have varying backgrounds. We have people who log on once a month. Everything's already set up in the bank, so they just want to quickly do a check. People go in and basically micromanage their money 6 times a day. They just love logging on. So you got all those different behaviours of how people wanted to utilise an app, and that was just the balances page, let alone how you transfer money, etc. So I do have a video. So what we actually did, shut the camera in the back to record. So what we do is, once we sit down, where's that now? So once the guys would sit down, basically we'd sketch away. So you can see on the back wall, we'd actually get every person to present their idea. So we have a little iPhone template. So each person would actually get up and show their idea. So the usual principles, there was never a bad idea. They went up through and did that. So what we did, I think this is a time lapse over 2 days. So once we sort of had all the sort of wireframes and sketches up on that top part in that corner there, we actually started refining them. So what are the 4 or 5 bits we actually like about the app? And we actually started to do a bit more refined prototype, and we actually got a bigger A4 kind of template. So the ones you see down the bottom, the bigger ones, that's actually the one where we all sort of agreed, that's sort of roughly how we'd like the balances page to look based on everyone's inside opinion. So this was a great 2 days actually, getting the team and bouncing ideas around, and by the end of the 2 days, it was just post-it notes and iPhone sketches everywhere. So it was on one of our IT floors. I think we scanned the teams who were sitting outside this room. It was quite colourful for them. But it was actually great to do that work and actually fine-tune what our design would be, and not just sort of going into one agency and go, right, how do we do it with getting their edition? We pretty much had the opinions of 12 to 14 people on the project. Alright, so pretty much where we got to, so that's just a close-up. So on the top there, they're pretty much our refined ones, so you can see there's some of the ideas we got for logging on. The fun one on the right is someone said, well, in terms of logging on, why don't we make it look like a safe? And they actually had to sort of turn the safe and do a combination lock to log on. Again, it was a great idea, but practically you're sitting there on the bus and trying to actually turn it with a safe and a combination lock. I think it probably sort of annoying customers, but so the idea, we know everyone uses a pin. What else do people use? We started looking at the swipe patterns of Android, so I guess we encourage people, what stuff that you sort of use, and since native apps use a lot of metaphors, what can we use there as well? So from there, I guess, this is where the fun part started. So we finished our 2-week session, so we had all those mapped out, so the fun part was of getting those refined mock-ups and basically start to do some work. So what we did now, we basically started moving into wireframe mode, so we would actually take all those rough sketches and actually start belting out something that gets a bit more fidelity. So that's basically a wireframe of where we landed to on our balances page. So When you're on the left, we wanted to try and aim to really sort of build a full-featured app, so we didn't want to go wide just with 3 functions, because we know from the feedback from ourselves and other banks, regardless of how snazzy it looks, they want to do everything on our current app. So we've already set precedent with our current mobile web app. So once we go native, we thought, well, everyone seems to like the whole Facebook, LinkedIn, left-hand side menu. There's a couple of banks that are building it now. So it's familiar, it uses icons, it looks quite nice, it's easy to get around, so we'll try that out. We know customers want to know their overall position, so what's the total of all my everyday accounts, total of all my loans, so they can see a quick snapshot, so that part ended in down the bottom. And we started simulating some of the sort of PIN features, etc. as well. This is the part I was talking about before. I get whiplash there, get at that. So the main part was, I guess we were talking about the behaviours of the app. So this is the stuff we did in the ideation session. So it's a bit hard to look. So I mentioned the one at the top of security. So we got the ones that are actually paranoid, or we get the ones who are carefree. Moving down the line, so obviously the joy of banking, you've got the crux between usability, ease of use, and security. So where's the sweet spot for that, especially in apps? We had customers, some on the left, they're very proactive. They log on 10 times a day, they love it, they go on there, they pay bills, they see their balance. We get ones who are lazy, they don't go in, they don't really care. They either don't care or they've actually set everything up. Everything's a future date or a recurring transfer, so they don't need to log in again. Everything just fires overnight in magical batch banking land. So they have no need to log on. They're pretty savvy, they know roughly what their balance would always be. I think we had some other behaviours there as well. So on the budgeting side, so again, customers who are really sort of full on in terms of how they look after their budget. And we had control as well. So that was really good to see the behaviours. So every time we actually pull out a card, so I think that's on Tuesday, we started working on the transfers, everything out. We actually sort of look at these every time we start a new card and say, right, what would a paranoid person do and what would a carefree person do? And make sure all those behaviours we've learned are actually being fused into us actually designing the app. So for now, we're basically in deliver mode. So we're about 8 weeks into delivery. So I'm going to shoot myself in saying this. We are targeting roughly around a July go live. We're going to try and send it out to our staff in May. So the fun part with apps is we're going to build a lot of infrastructure to release it to an internal app store and go through all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff in terms of enterprise security. Building the front ends is the easy part, actually making these things secure and sending them out to the big bad world. That's the fun part. So we're obviously going to cast 1,000 working on that. So this is actually our war room. So we have our stand-ups there every day, so we all huddle around, we have a little chant, we do that kind of thing. So in terms of how we do cards, we look at those behaviours, we look at all the mock-ups. On the other side of the wall, we still capture those, there are 500 little sketches. So if someone goes, what about that thing we talked about last year? It's still there. So all those ideas, we still capture them. And on the right-hand side, well, that's our traditional wall, and that's off we're going. So that's basically, probably a bit out of date, that photo, but up to the guys go into agile mode, pick up the card, and off they go. So that's sort of, I guess, an overview of how we're approaching our app. So I guess, yeah, just some sort of takeaways. That's what we've learned, I guess, in the last 6 months of fusing UX into our team. Really encourage, I guess, your team and your stakeholders to think end-to-end. So it's always easier said than done. It's always a cliche that all us bankers work in silos, and admittedly it still goes on, it still happens, and it's a huge challenge to try and really collaborate, get everyone to share ideas and share their initiatives. So in terms of evenness, usually if it comes down to building a PowerPoint, if you have a couple of initiatives in your channel, whether it's a branch or it's payments or it's customer service, develop personas, do some interviews, or worst case, simply make one up based on existing marketing data. Create a Sandra. So Sandra was sort of a mishmash of a couple of people that we interviewed, and just sort of see how do they actually touch those points. And you can actually start to see, well, we're actually missing something here, but how do they actually speak to a branch manager? That bit's not there. We need to actually design that. And look at competitors. So obviously that's an obvious one, and we made sure that we looked at competitors. We didn't want to work in isolation, but we also looked outside of banking, and most of our influence was coming from insurance and telcos and retailers overseas, especially in terms of design patterns. Because it was always the retailers and the social networks, since they didn't have the legalities and the compliance, they could just go nuts in terms of their UI, which is great because that was skewed towards younger customers and they lapped up. And I guess, focus on the touch points as well. So like the example, so finding out, so at the end of the day, we'll still be omni-channel, so you have desktop, you have mobile, branch, call center, etc. No matter how online you want your product to be and how savvy you think your 20-year-old customers are, they will still need to go to a call centre or a branch or get access to that via a video chat or some other technology. So make sure they can apply for it, they can service it, and get advice on it too. That's the crucial part. Us bankers, at the end of the day, we're the ones who know how these accounts work. We can provide the advice, so make sure those channels are there and not just at 9 to 4:30 each business day. It's like most of us, we're at work or at university, etc. In terms of building, if you do want to do any of these kind of projects, make sure you get varied backgrounds. Bring in reps from your front line. So we had 2 people from our call centre and 2 people from our branch. They were fantastic. They thought of stuff we would have never known. So in terms of, this customer rang up the other day and said this and did this. We use them all the time. We have fortnightly meetings with our call centre. We get on the phones, we see what comes through from our online banking queue. And the amount of feedback they got in saying that wouldn't actually work, guys, because of this, and trying to get I guess it's ultimately more the complaints and the technical support. That way, if we capture all that, throw it in the app, when we go live, it's less havoc in terms of our support networks. So bring those guys in from day one. So yeah, don't forget your frontline staff there. Make sure you don't sort of set up your ivory towers and build stuff and not have those guys engaged, because they're the advice they do nuisance. Yeah, fantastic. And lastly, I guess, test your ideas and test your prototypes. So those 2 sessions, it was really just $50 worth of stationery and a heap of iPhone stencils. And the amount of ideas we got out of that, the conversations we got, oh yeah, well, I actually use my Pinterest for this. Like, oh okay, well Pinterest actually work in a banking environment. Let's actually sketch that out and see how that works. So yeah, just testing and prototyping it, that's even before you need IT people. And then from there, you can use wireframing tools. Like that main tool there's Balsamic, it costs about $200. So we certainly don't go off and spend $500,000 on prototyping. So that was literally just one guy with a few of us sitting down and doing wireframes. And it's only until you get to the prototype stage, when you need developers, that you can actually start to get these concepts and ideas and bring them to life. And I guess it's important too to make sure you actually do test these as well. So we have lots of great ideas, we're pretty much confident, we've got personas, we've got behaviours. At the end of the day, you still need to test it as well. It's new technology, it's a new behaviour. And lastly, yes, focus on the journey and I guess not the silent initiative at hand. So it's certainly been a great learning from us, coming from a traditional banking and a traditional digital background, fusing into that journey. So I really recommend it. All right, thank you.